Hello and welcome to Paradox, Untold Stories from Athletic Directors with Dr. Danielle Lapointe and Dr. Dustin Smith. We have some crazy and unique stories for you, which are made possible by our sponsor, Wall of Fame. At the Wall of Fame, our mission is to bring your school's legacy to life. We transform school tributes to make it easier than ever to celebrate your whole community, showcasing your school's diverse history, proudest moments, and top role models. We understand that the true value of our Wall of Fame is in your content. Whether you are starting a new tribute or adding to an existing one, we give you all the resources you need to build an interactive experience and take your content to the next level. Speaking of next level, let's check in to see what Danielle and Dustin have for us today.
Hi, everyone. Today we have Lisa Montgomery with us. Hey, Lisa, how are you doing today?
Doing well, Danielle. Thank you for having me.
We are so excited to have you on here. We've tried a bit to get Lisa on here, and we finally are making it happen now. It's the summertime. So happy to have you here. Dustin, I wish I could say the same about you.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here too, and I'm glad that you're glad that I'm here. No, it's awesome for me. Lisa and I have gotten to know each other the last couple years, and I've really just been impressed with who she is and her leadership, and I really like her. Well, she has overcome some obstacles in her life, and one being a mentor in the cohort. She was able to overcome that mentor, and she survived the NIAAA educational leadership or executive leadership cohort. She is a graduate of that, a participant of that, if you will, and so that's where Lisa and I really got to know each other. And I'm enamored with Lisa because she's originally from Maryland, and we may talk about that here in a little bit, but she now is in Minnesota, but she went via Florida, which is not really the typical route that people would go from Maryland to Minnesota, but we'll talk about that. And Lisa, I am tickled to death to have you on here. And when I asked you if you'd do it, you said absolutely. We've tried to do this for a couple of weeks now, and we're finally getting to this point. But I want to tell you thank you for one, your participation in the cohort, because I think it's a really invaluable leadership. I guess professional development really is what it is. But two, for your willingness to jump on here and say, I'll take a chance with these two knuckleheads and see what we can come up with and have some fun, have a conversation. But let's do this, Lisa. I always ask this question. What's the resume not tell us about who Lisa Montgomery is? We can talk about you being in your role there in Minnesota, and we'll talk about exactly where that is here in a minute. But tell us what the resume doesn't tell us about who Lisa Montgomery is.
Well, probably through what most people go through is I was an athlete, right, in high school, and I ran track. Uh, I played volleyball, ran indoor and outdoor track, and a little bit of basketball. Uh, I ended up getting a scholarship to run track at the University of Maryland Eastern Shore. And then from there, I kind of just pushed my way south through University of Tennessee, Chattanooga, went to grad school there. I actually went to school for athletic training. So I'm actually a certified athletic trainer as well. Did that for a few years, a couple years there. And then I think I determined like, man, I want to see if I can I can coach. I've had all these mentors in my life and I wanted to see like, maybe I can coach. Let me put athletic training off on the back burner. So I stopped being an athletic trainer for a minute and got into coaching. And that's kind of how I fell into teaching. Didn't go to school for teaching. I went for physical therapy. um, so yeah, that's kind of how my story went. Um, Ended up coaching for years, track and field, of course, cross country, and girls weightlifting. Believe it or not, is a thing in Florida. So yeah, and it's kind of been how my life went from there.
So let me ask this question. You ran track in college. What event did you run?
100, 200, 4x1, 4x4. I did a little bit of high jump, long jump, and then I ended up running the 100 hurdles and got pretty good at it my junior and senior year. So I was one of those people though that coach needed you to do something,
You said
you
yeah.
just do it. You're like,
Yeah.
okay, coach, I don't know if I can do it, but sure. So
So was the 4x2, was that a big thing?
in high school, it was. In Maryland, we did have it at our state championships. Once you get into college, it's kind of hit or miss at a
Right.
relay or something like that. But yeah, so that was also a relay that I did do as well and performed in.
Seeing that, the reason I asked, because Arkansas brought it back. When I was in Arkansas, they brought the 4x2 back, which is different markings that you got to put on the track. And when you painted the track originally, if you didn't have it, having to come out and redo that, and exchange zones are where they have to be. And so it was unique. We run the 4x2 here, but for our state in Oklahoma, our state meet, they run only one heat. So you run it on Friday, and you won't run it when you do the 100 or the 100 hurdles or any of those other sprints or relays. You do it all separate on its own. So you may do some preliminaries or some heats going in for some other events, but you run the 4x2 just one time. And so you wouldn't run it back to back. You may run the 4x1 twice, but you don't run the 4x2 twice, which was unique to me.
That takes me back, Dustin. We did do that. We ran it in high school, and it's weird that I don't remember that. I think my seasoned brain just remembers what Florida does, and they don't have a 4x2 in their state championships. And so, yeah, I forgot. I forgot I even participated in that. Honestly,
Which is, I mean, the relays always fascinate me anyway, because you're one drop baton away from. I mean, the exchange is important. Obviously, you got to be able to run fast. Clearly, in some of those relays. Now, if you're running the 4x8, you're probably not really worried about being super super fast, but it's a different speed, obviously, in the 4x1 and the 4x2.
yeah, no, absolutely. Trust me, we've had our fair share. When I was coaching, our boys have had our fair share of not getting the baton around the track. So, yeah, at the wrong times too. I'll say
Right.
that.
So how do you coach that? I mean, I've heard it over the years, and how do you coach the exchange? You think that'd be a fairly simple thing, but you think about as that process happens while you're running full speed and the other person's trying to get to full speed and make that handoff. How do you coach that?
So, for me, I always started stationary. We didn't even get a baton right away. I like to get the kids kind of trying to figure out what their length between each other is if their arm is fully extended. So for the front and for the back. So once we kind of establish that and establish what hand you're actually going to receive the baton in and which hand you're going to actually give the baton to, then we kind of bring that baton into place, and we're still stationary, um, in just a line of alternate left to right, um, and then we just break it down from exchange zone one, so first leg to second leg, or second leg to third leg to fourth leg, and we repetition is everything, of course,
Yeah.
right? So the more we do it, the more proficient we get at it. I'm one of those coaches who has to have a most perfect, like I'm a perfectionist at that. So it's got to be pretty perfect. And so I'm sure I've got on my kids' nerves about, oh, we're doing it again. We're doing it again, until I felt good about uh, leaving practice and saying, I think we've got it now. But my kids, the strange thing is you do these things in practice, right? Um, After a while, you don't even have to say a whole lot. They're like, coach, that wasn't good. We're going back to do it again.
Yeah.
I said, you're reading my mind. I got you. So they took pride in having great handoffs, and then watching other kids who may not have been coached very well, and said, coach, that was a terrible handoff for other kids, and so I said, well, you see what happens when we break down film and we see how much time, if it's a half of a second or 0.2 of a second, that we can kind of reduce from the time that we want to spend around the track. So, but I had some really great kids. I can't complain through my coaching days.
Now, you also mentioned something, and you may be the first one that's ever been on here that's been a certified athletic trainer. So I wanna ask this question: How have I know concussion's a big point now, and that we're talking that's a hot button item, obviously, and return to play. How has that evolved in your time going through athletic training and the testing that happened even then, which was a little different, obviously, than what we do now? How has that traversed throughout your career?
You're just
Well,
hitting her with hard questions. You're just like,
Yeah.
how do you do
Well,
a
I
ground
mean,
handoff?
we
Tell me
haven't
about the
had
concussion
we haven't
protocol
had an athletic
differences.
trainer on
I
here, so I gotta ask.
apologize, Lisa, for what he's doing to you right now.
well, when we played, when we played, it was kind of like, are you okay? Tap on the shoulder, you're good.
Right.
All right, get back in there, kind of thing. No, now, since I've gotten in athletic training, it's been, first it was the, 7-day protocol, or, it could be 2 days out, just depending. Now we have this protocol where you pretty much have to sit your kids out if you assume or you think that there's a concussion. So, no, and I think, we've got to rule on the side of conservative for our kids and making sure our kids are safe, before we start to put our kids back in games and in game time situations. And we've seen the evolution of what's happened in football and soccer, are major contact sports. So no, I think it's a great thing. I think it preserves the athlete, and kind of keeps us away from those things that could harm us in the future. So I think we're on the right stride there, and I know it's only going to get better as we evolve. So
Well, I'm gonna ask this. I think lacrosse would probably be up there as a pretty heavy contact sport, and concussions are probably a big part of that sport. I'm only saying that because I am not very well versed in lacrosse because we don't have it in Oklahoma. We didn't have it in Arkansas when I was there, so I'm not familiar with. But I'm just deducting in my own head that there's probably a high number of concussions that result because of lacrosse as well.
yeah,
Kind of depends on girls and boys, and like we're talking about two different sports, and like what state you're talking about, because some have helmets, some don't. There's a whole bunch. You just went down a whole like path that wasn't like that's a lot right there.
Which doesn't surprise you, I'm sure. But I think
but But
go
to
ahead, Lisa.
Daniel's point, no, like for girls versus boys, yes, there is contact in girls, but not as much contact with boys. They wear the pads and the girls don't. Um, their calls are their quick fouls are called pretty abruptly. And the weird thing is, in Florida, the girls wore helmets. In Minnesota, the girls don't wear helmets; they just wear the goggles. So
And
yeah, I think it's
and that was like what, like maybe like 3 years ago, the
yeah
helmet thing just came into play.
for
And like
Florida.
I remember my team going from no helmets to helmets, and you would have thought like the world was ending. They were not, because they were goggles, right? They just wore. That's what I played with when I played lacrosse. I wore the goggles. Also have a broken nose from lacrosse, so there's probably reasoning behind some of the switching over. But but yeah, that just the like evolution of what you're talking about to concussions, and like in just this one sport and one gender is kind of like extreme, to be honest.
Yeah, no, but as Dustin, I've seen it, especially more so with boys. I've seen concussions, and because you've got some football players that are playing lacrosse and they hit just like they're playing football in
Right.
lacrosse. So I think that and the evolution of equipment, of course, right, and helmets, I think has helped, right. But yeah, it's pretty interesting. It's pretty interesting.
So we've touched on you've been in Florida, now you're in Minnesota. Paint on us a map exactly where you were in Florida because you've only been in Minnesota. You haven't been in Minnesota a long time. So let's paint on a map in Florida where we were and presently where you're at in Minnesota.
Okay, so I was in the Orlando area, in Florida, small town. Oh, I don't say it's a small town, suburb town called Winter Garden. And now I'm in Minneapolis. So you're talking about heat exhaustion, heat illness, possibly, in
The
Florida,
cold temp, yeah.
95, 100
Hurricanes.
degrees.
Yeah.
And and I'm waiting, it's June and we're still, in the 70s or low 80s here. And it's June already. So, and we're just hitting those marks. So, it's been pretty interesting. It's been very cold, when you're November, December, January, here, opposed to, you could potentially still have 80-degree weather in Orlando, in those months. So it's been very interesting. I've had to invest in some coats,
I was gonna say go shopping. You have to go shopping a little.
parkas, some boots, and not the little ankle boots, but like Sorel to your knees boots. Yeah, so my wardrobe has changed pretty good here. Scarves, of course, gloves, yeah, and not just your average gloves, but probably like 2-layer gloves here. Yeah, so maybe some heaters. I've got some warmers that I bought from Amazon. So I put those warmers inside my gloves and try to stay warm while I'm outside. So
Has
it's been
has
interesting.
it has it been a big shock for those two different like extremes, right? AD wise. Like has it changed a lot of how you handle like game readiness specifically like I don't know, outdoors or games you're traveling? Like what does that look like?
So I think for being outside, no, we don't really have any sports outside here. Um,
Didn't even
Everybody's
cross my
indoors.
mind.
Basketball, swim, wrestling, everything's inside for winter. So besides getting from your car to the building, you're fine. But those could be cold moments. Don't get me wrong. Um, it's the unlayering that you have to do when you go inside. I think is the bigger task. But no, I think um, it's the cancellations of events that you
Mhm.
have to continuously plan for. In Florida, it's all right. Yeah, it's raining, it's pouring, it's a storm, it's a hurricane, it's a tornado possibly, and you got to cancel. Here, there's 5 feet of snow on the ground, and so you got to cancel, or it starts to shorten your season, and you can't get all your games in because of the snow. So those are the caveats to moving from Florida to Minnesota.
So let me ask this, Lisa. Do you ever tap into that 4x1 speed when you got to go from your car to the building when it's like really cold? Do you go back to those days and say, "Yeah, I got this. I can make that run pretty quick."
Hey, man, tell me about it. Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of like you're wearing a mask. Like I have on one of those full masks that you would probably wear when you're skiing. Uh, that's how cold it gets, at least, or that's how cool it gets to me. I remember when the temperature started getting a little cooler in October, and there's some maybe 30-degree days, and I'm coming in with layers upon layers, and people are looking at me like it's not that bad yet. They're like, this is mild. I'm like, it's 30 degrees out here. They're like, yeah, it's going to get a little colder. You're not ready yet. You might want to go invest in some more clothing. So yeah, it's been interesting though. It's just trying to kind of prepare myself. But I was telling Dustin earlier, I was like, they said it's mild, so we didn't really get a whole lot of snow this time around. So uh, they
You
tell me that I
say
haven't really experienced winter yet.
no. I mean, you say it's 30, it's not that cold. I'm like, if water freezes, it's cold. Like that's the rule. It's
And
cold.
so that's
So
another thing too, Danielle. Like, we had our conference in Orlando, and I'm going to be gone for some time, and then after conference, I usually take vacation. So either go see family, or we'll talk about how many times I go on cruises in a minute here. But um, so they're like, yeah, you might have to run your pipes. I was like, so keep your water dripping. I was like, what do I need to do that for? And they're like, your pipes will freeze and you'll come back with a busted pipe. And I'm like, oh yeah, that would never happen in Florida.
Right.
do you
So
have to leave your water on while you're not there?
yes,
Mhm.
yes. So she could
No.
potentially come back to busted
Danielle,
pipes.
you
Yeah.
said water freezes,
No,
that's
I
too cold.
understand what I said, but like that's terrifying at the same time as like leaving your water on while you're not home is like a whole
You're
nother
not.
level of terrifying.
It's not full fledged. You
No,
don't crank it on. They want you
It's just a
dripping
drip.
it or just
yeah,
like a steady stream of some sort, but not full fledged. But
No.
so
it's a
everything's
lot less
dripping.
expensive to pay the water bill than it is to buy new pipes and repair your floors and anything. And the bad thing about a busted pipe or a frozen pipe, you don't know it until obviously it thaws out.
Yep. Yeah. The weird thing is too, they even do that like for your concession stands and your stadiums,
Mm-hmm.
they'll turn off the water completely
Yeah.
in the wintertime here. So, by spring and you're like, oh my gosh, we need our water on because, track is starting, lacrosse is starting, spring sports are starting, and we don't have water on right away. So, yeah.
And you think about those press boxes that are up above the ground, obviously, and not really insulated. If you cross a bridge, they may have signs that say ice bridge will freeze before the regular roads, so there might be ice on the bridges just because it's an elevated surface. Well, it's the same thing with a press box. It's elevated, so they'll shut off water completely once football season ends. At least this is what they do here. Shut it off completely until the spring when you don't have to worry about frozen pipes.
Yep.
So
That's
just a whole
exactly.
different deal. And we're in Oklahoma. It's not like we're in Minnesota. I mean, we still deal with that though.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been really interesting. Like I said, just the differences that, some of the things that you don't think about that you have to do is like I said, even when you're away. Um, and so, yeah, I was gonna say I like to go on cruises. So that's my getaway, if you will, from the AD life. Um, and so
Well,
after
perfect when
conference,
you lived in Florida. You can just
oh yeah, because I'm right there, right? So it's
yeah.
easy. Yeah, after conference, I'm out of there. I'm looking at water, beaches, hot sun beaming on me. Yeah, it's
Not
beautiful.
cold.
Yep, not cold at all. Just yep, and try to just get away. I mean, I know, yeah, we have Wi-Fi even on the ships now, of course, but just to try to just unplug for a bit.
Yeah.
So usually I'm taking like 3 cruises. If I'm lucky, I'll get 4 in during the year at some point, even if they're short ones for the weekend. But I'll try to get some in, and then I'll usually take a long one in the summer and the winter if I can.
What is your
Define
preferred
short and long.
port?
That's what I want to
I
know.
was,
What's the
I was
difference
saying,
between short and long?
So short would be like a 3 or 4 dayer. Long is 7, 8 or longer. Um,
You can do that. You can be gone that long. Whew.
absolutely, absolutely. It's something about the water that just is calming and just I hear if there's birds chirping and we're at a port, I hear the birds chirping, but if we're on out there, you just hear the water and yeah, it's just something calming. The sun, the sunset, the sunrise.
see,
Yeah,
now you're speaking my language. Frozen pipes, I don't understand, but now, now I got you. I understand it. We're on the same page now. Well, let
Well,
me
I read a
ask you
book
this:
that
where's your new preferred port now that you're in Minnesota?
you know what? I've been out of California. I've been out of pretty much every part of Florida. Haven't been out of Galveston, been out of New Orleans. Um, I'd have to go with like Miami or Fort Lauderdale, I think,
Yeah,
are some of my favorites.
we
California,
did.
the Long Beach one, it's just really tough to get to. Yeah, I don't really like how you have to
We
travel
took.
to get.
Yeah, we took an Alaskan cruise out of Seattle one time, and it was an amazing cruise. I definitely recommend that if you haven't done
So
that yet. But
that was on my thing to do for this summer, and I had to cancel due to family. So
mm,
yeah, that was that one. I was like, oh man, because I've never been to Alaska, so that was gonna be
that was
really
one of that was a good one. That was a good one. We really liked that one. So you'll look. Let's put that one back on the list.
yep, definitely.
so I
Yep.
read a book that said one time about cruises that it's like being in prison except you can drown.
No, no, stop your shenanigans right
That's just
now.
what a guy said in a book. I'm not saying I said that. I'm just saying
No,
I read it in a book.
Man, you know what? I usually get away from folks as much as I can, and I'll go eat in the morning. I'm still an early riser when it comes to getting on the cruise, but then I'll just find a spot. I'll find a spot out in the sun and just hang out, read a book, listen to music. Yeah, or take a
Not,
nap.
not answer your phone. I mean, you don't have to worry about any of that mess.
Nope, not at all. Not
No
at all.
mad parent calling you, nobody canceling a game, none of that mess.
It's a beautiful thing, trust me. And until you see people on your cruise, though,
Right.
that you're like, oh my gosh, those are my kids. What are they doing on the same cruise as me?
Yeah, you can't
No, has
get
that
away.
That's happened before. It's happened.
No, that's
Yeah.
not fun.
And the crazy thing is I only recognize them because they had the senior shirt on. Everybody has a senior shirt, and I'm like, and so they kind of did one of these waves like this, and they were really respectful. They're like, we're not going to bother her. We'll just wave really quick, and then that was kind of it. So I appreciated that.
Cool.
Man,
Well,
that sounds like that could be a story all in itself, but we won't tap into that. I mean, unless you jump there, but we'll jump into what the premise of this whole podcast is that's the stories, the crazy, the fun, the wild, the stuff that you don't plan for, the stuff that you just have to say, oh, that just happened. And maybe not in the moment, but as you think back on it, and you've been in this AD world for a while, so I'm sure you had some stories or a story that has just caught your mind, and you thought, "Man, I can't believe that happened." So we'll turn it over to you and let you run with it, however you want to run with the story.
So I get to this high school that I was currently employed at, and I went back as the athletic director. I was an assistant AD there, a teacher, a coach. And so I go back and, I'm surveying my facility and I'm walking around. I walk into the gym. I'm like, oh, there's practice going on. We've probably got volleyball games happening soon here. And I look up and I'm like, oh, there's a couple lights out. So we've got to get those repaired before the games happen for volleyball. And so I call, through the district, you've got to call and put this work order in. Like, hey, we've got 2 lights out. Well, they tell me you've got to have 40% of your lights out before we can come out and replace them. I'm like, are you kidding? Yeah, you've got to have 40%. And so I'm like, well, first of all, I don't know how many lights are in the ceiling.
Right.
Let me go count and find out what 40% is, right? I'm like, oh my gosh. So I go back in there. I'm like, oh gosh. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to lie. And the next week would say, we've got 4 lights out versus the 2 that we had out. So maybe hopefully they'll come. Oh, well, of course, my work order got pushed back. And
by the time they enter the work order, there'll be 4 lights out.
That's right. The season goes on, and we're like halfway through. Actually, I think we almost made it all the way through volleyball season. I've got parents coming to me, and they're like, are we going to continue to play in the dark? Well, by then, I really do have 4 lights out by then. By the end of the week. I still don't have anybody coming in. I call, I email, I put another work order in. Hey, now we've got 4 lights out. Or actually, I'm sorry, because I said I had 4.
6.
I'm now down to
6 now.
6, right? So I'm telling this story. I'm fibbing like terribly. We get into the basketball season. No, this is no joke either. We get into the basketball season, and I start to look up, and now there's like 8 lights out. Well, I still haven't had anybody come out. So I go to our repair guy, our repair manager, who thankfully he's great. He goes, hey, if you can get a lift out here, he said, I just happen to have a certification to get on a lift. Well, first of all, who knew there was even this certification to get on a lift? He's like, or you'd have to wait for them to do it, for somebody from the district to come out that's certified to get on this lift. So I was like, hey, well, why is it taking so long? I've reported that there's like, I'm going fibbing and saying we've got like 12 lights out at this point because we're well into the basketball season. I've got parents coming in and saying, are we going to play in the dark? The kids can't see. And granted, we weren't in the dark, but there were some dark spots. because we've had so many lights out. So I said, I'm telling parents, hey, I put in numerous work orders. I've got to have 40%. Like, I'm being very transparent with them. And I said, yeah, I've tried, and we can't do it yet. So I call my repair guy who's at our school back, and I said, well, what do we got to do to get this lift out here? And so he goes, well, there's only 2 in the district. I'm like, what? He said, well, if it's at another school, you just have to wait until your turn comes up. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. 2 in the district. We've got 22 high schools, 40 middle schools, and I don't even know how many elementary schools. There's more than 40. And I'm like, I don't know who has it. So there's one on the east side, one on the west side. So then I go to my principal and I'm saying, look, we've got to do something. I don't know what else we can do. This is what I've done. But our kids are pretty much shooting in the dark at this point. I put this work order in well before the volleyball season. So he goes, I know somebody that knows somebody. So he goes into his email and kind of gets us pushed through to the top of the list. We finally get the lift. I mean, we're probably halfway in basketball season though, and we get all of them done, all the lights that were out done. And so my repair guy goes, he said, while we have the lift, I'm just going to go ahead and repair or just change out a few more. But I think that we'll probably, you might find yourself a couple weeks down and we might have 2 or 3 more that are out. So that's what happened though. And we were like, literally, I'm like, poor kids, we're shooting in the dark almost. But yeah, it was pretty interesting.
So you think about that, and they say, okay, their standard response is you got 40% of your lights out. Which, I mean, if I do the math, that's getting close to half of your lights out. And if it's the wrong half, obviously, then that's bad. So you like my quick math there?
That was so good.
Yeah. So, but part of that may have been because we only have 2 lifts, so we've got to, I mean, if we're going to make that transition to take that lift from this place to this place, one of our high schools to another high school, then it better be worth it, because that's not just a little short jaunt. But it's not fair to kids at that point when you're out there and you're like, man, I got 12 lights out. And if they're all right over the court, then, I mean, there's a difference. Like you go out to Staples Center in Los Angeles and they'll be dark over the stands, but they're not dark out on the court. So this could have been that same kind of situation, only reversed. I mean, it could have been real dark on the court and then lit up well in the stands.
So Dustin, to your point, that's what my repair guy did though too. Because of course, when you put the work order in, you've got to order lights, and they didn't have enough in stock. So he just moved lights around too, where at least the court had all the lights in there, and so the outer skirts of where the bleachers were a little darker than the court. But yeah, it was pretty interesting. 40%.
I feel like this is something that it took me a minute to figure out when I first moved to Florida. Was, I'm originally from New York, where the districts there are kind of run by the towns, right? You have 1 high school, 1 middle school, maybe like 4 elementary schools, right? But in Florida, our districts are counties. And I know there's other, states that do it each way, right? It's different across the whole country. And that's like one of the cool things about, talking to everybody from across the country is we learn these things. So in Florida, when you're saying a district, that's one of the hard points, is to get things repaired when there's 100 schools, in the district. To you, this is incredibly important, and to 100 schools, it isn't. And that makes your job so much more difficult, especially when you have parents asking you every night, right? Like, hey, and you can do nothing. Your hands are tied. And there's some districts that have that, figured out a little bit better than others. And you're like, 40% are just 2 lifts. And it can be really frustrating. You're talking about a part that I think is really common. A lot of ADs can relate to, because you are not in control of what you need to get fixed. You know what needs to be done. You've done all the correct things to get there, but no dice. No lights
Yep.
for you.
We were lucky that, so after that, at the end of that year, we ended up ordering LEDs because they were originally like halogen and fluorescent. They were a
Yeah.
mixture. So my repair guy, he changed them all out. So hopefully that's a little bit better. Of course, I'm not there any longer, but I told the incoming AD, I said, if you ever need lights repaired, make sure you lie and say you got 10 out ahead of time.
It's the only time it's okay to lie.
Yep.
Did you ever think about having your volleyball kids aim for the lights and trying to knock a couple of them out and just say, hey, maybe we can speed that up a little bit?
No, that would have been a good idea though, Dustin. Maybe they probably would have taken me on that one.
Yeah. I mean, let's practice this. We want to hit you in this part of the court, so let's just practice hitting towards that light or set the ball up there by accident, quote unquote.
Yep.
It's crazy how these are your facilities and you're running them, but you don't actually have full control over them, right? It is an aspect of the athletic director job that is very unique to the AD job, but also can be very frustrating, especially when people are constantly reminding you, hey, did you know the lights are out? I didn't. Thank you.
Yep.
I didn't notice.
Yeah.
And how about you having a guy that was certified to be on a lift? I mean, who knew that?
Man, he is like the jack of all trades guy. Like he can do a lot of what he isn't supposed to do, but he gets it done. So as long as you have the tools in place, he'll get it done for you. So like totally appreciative because I'm sure we would have been waiting even longer if we didn't have him aboard. So yeah, he's our go-to guy who can do it all and fix it all.
Well, I think that's a huge takeaway there is to those relationships that you build with people that you have to have. The people that are invaluable, the people that really can come through in a pinch when you really need it. And as you said, he's the jack of all trades. So you never knew. It may be a plumbing issue. It could be a light issue. It could apparently be a lift issue. He's got to be on the lift. So that'd been like torture if they'd have just sent the lift and nobody was certified to get on it. So you just have to look at the lift and the lights are out and nobody can get on it because they're not certified. But it's important to build those relationships with key people that help you get the job done.
Well, and even, we talk about custodians all the time, but even the principal, right? He wrote an email to make this stuff happen. You had to pull a lot of strings for some simple light bulbs. Like, how many people does it take to change a light bulb? Like,
there you go.
Joke. You can make it right into that one. Come on. But yours took a significant amount of people. And it's a really good story to highlight it because it's such a small thing that should be easily fixed. And it gave you months of problems.
Yeah. So.
I mean, and I'd like to, maybe that's what I'll try at home. When my wife says we got a light out, I'll be like, we got to get 40% of the lights out before I'll change them and see how good that goes over.
No.
It's a bad idea.
No. Well, it's better than, who was it? Was it Toll who like rigged the ladder system? Could have been worse.
Yeah. He had a lift and then put a ladder from the lift up against the wall so that he could, so he could change the light.
Yeah. I do not think there's a certification for that. There was no certification.
Not at all.
No, but Lisa's guy probably would have said you don't have the license for that. Here I do, let me tell you. But I mean, kudos to him for saying, okay, let's change some lights out while we have the lift. Let's make some more adjustments to make sure that we don't have to be in this. And I feel bad for kids. I mean, your volleyball kids had to play throughout the year. Basketball played a significant amount of year with the lights. And you said it wasn't dark, but there were spots. And some would say that's a home court advantage. Some would say that, hey, our kids are used to doing that. But it's just not fair to kids to be able to put them in that situation. Now, you made the transition to LEDs that obviously helped, and you could turn those on and off. But I remember back in the day of those halogens, if the lights went off for a power outage or some kind of power surge of some sort, it took 20 minutes for those things to cool down and then kick back on. So you were delayed anyway. So it almost maybe took me back. You talked about earlier taking you back to high school and running the 4x1. This kind of takes me back to my high school days where we played in the dark some because of the halogen lights.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it was like I said, he's our guy for putting up banners, taking them down too. And sorry, you guys. Of course, this is perfect that we're having a fire drill. If you hear it in the back.
Like, do you have to go? Is it like a real deal, or is it just a drill?
Nah, it's a drill.
Okay.
I'm gonna tuck away and make sure.
Can hear it.
Yeah.
Pretend you don't hear it. I'm busy.
Well, it was great to have you hop on here for sure. I'm glad we were able to finally make our schedules work as well and get you on here and hear about.
Well, and
that's
here's
so
what
frustrating.
I want to do.
It just brings me right back to like I know that feeling of like not having full control over your facilities, and it's not a fun feeling.
Yeah, no. Needless to say, he's the one that gets, if I'm going out for a meal, I'll grab him a meal, and of course, gear. Like I throw that gear at him, and he's like, "Man, you're the only one that does this. Thank you so much. I just appreciate it." I'm like, "Hey, you take care of me all the time." So
right,
yeah.
And how big is that? Just a simple thing of, hey, let me say thank you, and it could be with swag, it could be with food, it could just be, hey, I appreciate what you do. And our world would be so much better if we adopted that philosophy on the whole instead of just these certain occasions.
Yeah.
But I think it's important for ADs to know building those relationships. Yes, that's important, but appreciating those people, not the position, but appreciating the person goes a long way, and that will help you get some things done that maybe you're not used to getting done. And it may take longer, but they may speed that process up. Whether that was your principal, whether that was this Mr. Certification Jack of all trades, whatever those situations are, and whoever those people are at your campuses, you will know those. Obviously, as time goes on, you will figure out who those important people are.
No, absolutely. How bad are you hearing this?
Like I can't hear it at all.
Faintly.
Oh,
it's faint.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's faint. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That's awesome.
If you're not concerned,
you really
we
can't
actually
hear it, Dustin. I'm concerned about your ears.
No, I mean I heard the.
Okay.
I heard the repetitive sound, whatever you want to call it. I don't want to call it a horn, but remember we did an episode, and Darren O'Shero's out in Hawaii, which is where Tony's out. But he had a fire drill go on while he was recording as well. So it may be us. We may just have to take the blame on this one, Lisa.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it's not you. It's us.
Here's what I want to do, Lisa. I know we've asked for some stories, but in our next season, we want to talk with multiple guests at one time. And what I want to do is pick your brain of going from a school site to a district site and having more than one high school, and you're dealing with middle schools and what that really looks like. But we may bring Tony on as well and have you guys talk about just the differences that you see from the district level as opposed to a site level. And because there's a lot, obviously, and you're dealing with a lot more moving parts. And so I say that to say we want to bring you back on here. It may not be with Tony, maybe somebody else, but to have a conversation and a joint conversation about situations that we deal with in our profession. Again, the goal is just to help make our profession better. We do it via laughter. We do it in a different format than some other podcasts, but that's okay. This is just a way for us to enjoy life a little bit. And then I want to find out after you take this Alaska cruise if it's all that Danielle has made it out to be.
It is.
Yeah, we'll do. I've got one more story if you want to hear it.
Fire it out there.
All right. Yeah. Well, I've got more, but this is probably a good one. So going back to my Florida days, and we're having a football game. We're probably maybe halfway in, and so the storm comes through, and we follow our protocol. We see it; it's 12 miles away. So at 8 miles, we're supposed to start rounding everybody up, So it comes in, we see 8 miles, we make the announcement, everybody to their cars. If you don't have a car, everybody go to the gym. We get our teams in the locker rooms, cheerleaders, band, all of that. And so everybody's kind of moving slow, but they made their way in. The teams are in. The cheerleaders are in. I think band was almost in, but the spectators are moving extremely slow, right?
Because it's not raining, right?
It hadn't started raining yet. That's the weird thing.
Problem.
It hadn't started raining yet. So, but it comes in so quickly.
Yeah.
That nobody's moving fast enough to get out of the way. It hit it was a big boom of thunder and lightning. It took our scoreboard. It took out 2 of the poles. It was so close, and I'm helping. I'm saying, hey, let's move. Everybody, let's move. This is all before that happened.
But they started moving real quick.
We could feel that lightning bolt through the ground, and all you hear is everybody starts screaming. This is how bad it was. It was so bad that I could feel it through the bottom of my feet. It scared the living crap out of me. So I go into the booth because I was like, at this point, I'm like, I can't keep waiting for people to make moves. This is crazy. I don't know when the next one's coming. So, it took everything out. So I go into the booth, calm myself down for a second because I'm freaking out at this point. I'm like, oh my gosh, that felt like it just hit me. So I calm myself down. Some of our ticket takers who were kind of helping out and deans, they were in the ticket booth. And then I decided to go back out because there's people just kind of scattered everywhere at this point because they weren't moving very quickly. Well, after that happens, we've got 2 people down. Down because they got hit in some kind of way. We had to use 2 AEDs that night to revive people.
Holy crap.
Yeah. When I say that it was that close, it was that close. That's why it really scared me. One of our bookkeeper's husband was close to the fence, and I probably wasn't too far away from him. He was so close to the fence that, how the fence is kind of crisscrossed like this, right? He had a burn spot that was the crisscross of the fence on the back of his back because it struck him that close. I guess I don't know, maybe it hit the fence or part of the fence. But now he never lost consciousness, but he had that burn on the back of his back. And it was just one of those crazy, freakish moments where the storm brewed in so fast. Again, it wasn't even raining yet. Lightning and thunder came in. It struck, like I said, it struck 2 poles. It struck our scoreboard, and we were all freaked out. So, needless to say, people started moving a little bit faster, right? But it just kind of goes to show you. So we had put in place. We had recommended to our district to put in place, 10 to 12 miles, and so I think 10 got approved to where, once we see 10 miles close to that area, and we use a weather app, that we are to, start evacuating and making our procedures so people can kind of go to a safe area.
So
this is literally every AD's, like Florida AD's nightmare. This is like, no, I'm so sorry that you experienced that because that is absolutely terrifying.
Yeah. We went
on so
unscathed,
many levels.
thankfully. We were unscathed, but it could have been way worse. Yeah.
But think about that moment, even when that struck and you were like, I've got to have a moment because that scares me. You're still a human being in that process, even though you're responsible for all those people. You had to take a moment to say, okay, I got to collect myself. And then when you get back, you notice that there were 2 people down. I mean, and you've got to go back. I mean, you don't get to just take off the AD hat and say, that's not my responsibility now. So you've got things you got to get done,
Yeah.
and you got to make sure people are attended to and taken care of. But just that moment, and that, I don't want to call it a shock because that's really what it is. But I mean, the moment that happens, and you've got to still have your wits about you and still be the athletic director.
Yeah, our athletic trainers were very responsive and did all the necessary things that they were supposed to do. We just, like you said, we moved into action as quickly as possible, and then getting those people into a safe environment once we were able to. So yeah, it was a pretty scary moment.
Did you lose electricity? Because you said you hit the scoreboard at 2 light poles. So like, did electricity go out in the stadium?
So ironically, it was just those 2 poles that went out. It's weird. It was just like it.
Is that 40%? That's 40% then, based on the amount
there
of
you go. There
poles.
you go.
So that's good, right? It could have been worse. You could have like lost all the lights. It could have been in the dark. I'm
Yep.
thinking like you're trying to communicate with people over the loudspeaker. If you have no electricity, that goes away. So, but you did still have electricity, so that's good.
Yeah, we did. Ironically, we played that game in a different facility that next day. It was in the afternoon or morning. I think maybe it was at 10 or something like that. But yeah, no, it was. Yeah, it was. That was probably one of the most terrifying experiences, I would have to say, that I occurred and endured during an AD. Being an AD. So yeah.
Well, I think even the moment when it struck and you're like, man, I could feel it through my feet. I could feel that, and then you go and collect yourself, take a moment, just say, I'm gonna be safe for a moment, because sometimes you don't have to. I mean, you got to protect number one yourself, and then you realize that 2 people are down, and I mean, just the fear of that in my own mind of just saying, okay, and you've got a training that neither one of us have. I mean, you're an athletic trainer, so you know what those people are supposed to do. You know how to address that situation, but it's still not like the storm went away and said, "Oh, we got 2 people down, storm out." Storm's still there. You just got to make sure those people are taken care of and get them to a safe spot.
Yeah.
How did you figure out that people were down?
Well, when after, like Dustin said, after I get my moment and say, okay, can't be scared because I've got to go back out and see if everybody's okay, and you're still trying to kind of evacuate people. And so that's when you see somebody or somebody's tapping you, hey, there's someone down there, or
you hear like commotion,
kind of screaming, and it's kind of an organized chaos, if you will. Yeah, so you just kind of jump into action and you're saying, I'm hoping the storm is either gone or the danger that we did experience is away at this point, because now we're in the saving lives, so but like I said, it was pretty terrifying, but I'm just glad that everybody was safe, and we got out there with everybody safe and breathing.
Well, and think about the old boy who had the chain link mark on his back.
Oh,
I mean,
is it still there? I want to know if it's like
I'm
permanent mark.
I don't know. This was at another school. This wasn't at the last school I was at. So I'm not sure, but when I tell you that I thought it struck me, because that's how badly I could feel it through the ground. Like it was pretty bad. It was pretty bad.
Man, I'm terrified just sitting here listening to this story, just thinking, man, I can't imagine being in your spot. Especially walking into that booth and just saying, okay, I've got to have a moment. And then when you walk back out, it's the classic example, because so many people think they're invincible. And so many people will sit at a football game and be like, I'm going to sit on these metal bleachers, and because the lightning's not close. And that should be the story that we should put out there. This is what happens.
Yep.
And people, it's not real until it actually, I mean, you said it, people moved a little quicker after that moment. But unfortunately, it shouldn't get to that moment. It should be like, hey, we've got the warning. It's within 10 miles. We need to get out of here.
Yep.
What a
to be in the lightning capital of the United States, You would think we would move a little quicker.
Take it more seriously.
Yeah, or take it more seriously. So of course, with that experience, for me going to another school, I'm a no holds bar with that. I'm like everybody out, and of course, you still have some football coaches, or not even just football coaches, just spectators who are still kind of lingering. And I try to tell them that story, and hopefully, maybe they take it into consideration to be a little bit more serious about it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I've said it
You just
before.
warmed us
Lightning's
up with
undefeated.
that warm up story, and then you just hit us with the main act there, huh?
Yeah. I
My
see what you
God.
did there. You hit us. I
Yeah.
see what you
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
My goodness.
I wasn't expecting that one. I mean,
No.
and I still can't. I'm still going to take some time to process this because
It it hits very close to home for me being in Florida when this is like a thing that's talked about. You hear about this happening. We've spoken about that before. We've heard about people being struck. The fence was struck by lightning and people were leaning on it and like it. So you hear these horror stories, but like I actually have not known any of the ADs who worked there. Now I do, and I just it is. It's just you're trying to do everything correctly and you want to make sure you have your plans in place, evacuate. But if your people aren't moving fast enough, and then you're right, we talked about this before in another episode, it kind of puts you in danger because now you're the one outside because people wouldn't do what they were told to do. And that is also frustrating. So it is.
yeah, I will say this: it's not just Florida where there's lightning.
No.
So I mean, I
Right.
know
Absolutely not.
you may have it there, but we have lightning delays here all the time, and
Yeah.
lightning has not been defeated yet. So I don't mess around with it when it's there, and I tell people, and at some point you got to say you're on your own. We've given you warning. It's like in my part of the country, there's idiots that go out on their porch and watch a tornado coming right at them, and I'm thinking, I don't know what else you can do. You can only do so much. You can't forcibly make somebody go in to do something. You want to seek shelter, whatever, that's up to you. If you decide that's not your cup of tea, I mean, sorry about you.
Don't
Good
do it
luck
in
to
my
you,
house though.
whatever.
Go do it to your own house. Yeah. That's the
I don't want to trouble, and that's the problem. Is our job is to try to make sure that they get out, make sure that they're safe, they're in a location. But at some point, you got to draw the line and say, okay, you're taking a chance on your own. I'm not going down with that ship. I'm just going to say, I've given you the warning.
Agreed. No. And I will say
now I
this
know.
again, having that experience, I was blessed to have a great staff, a great admin staff at my previous school, and so getting people evacuated when we needed to, and making sure people stayed in until it was time for us to get back on the field has been a blessing, honestly. So yeah, we've got some good people in place that help out with that. So
Well, I knew Lisa would be great. I didn't know she'd bring the boom to this level.
Whew.
And she,
This is
I'm still
extreme. This
trying
is going to
to,
go up for the most extreme award at the
no
end of the year. We
question.
do
We might
awards
as well
at the
just
end of
go
the
ahead
year.
and wrap it up right
We'll
now.
give it to her. Yeah, we do awards at the end of the year. They're very prestigious. Everybody, we have in a most extreme category, and this fits in it. But yeah, that is. Oh, I can't even speak. That's a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, I just try to process just walking out and seeing two people down. I mean, that's just still trying to, but it goes back to you have plans, you have an emergency
Yep.
action plan, you try to evacuate, tell people to do things, but still people are going to people. And adults are messy, and situation people are messy altogether. And so trying to get them to do something they don't want to do, they're going to
Mhm.
fight you on it. They're going to take their time. But to see it from your eyes from that moment, to say, I don't want to have this repeated again. And thankfully everybody was okay and you were able to get through that moment, but it could have been way worse. And
Yeah.
you don't want it to be, but that's where people just got to get to trust that you're doing what you're supposed to do, and there's a reason why there's warnings for that.
Yeah, I've had havoc too before, Dustin and Danielle, of, stopping a game because they're like, "Oh, there's that lightning's so far away," or "It's just a little bit of lightning," and I'm like, "You can put that in my face all day long, but at the end of the day, I know what,
Yeah.
I'm not God or whatever you believe in or whatever storm you believe in, but what I can tell you is that we're gonna rule on the side of safety. So
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
can hit me all day with that one.
Now I know why you bought a park and moved to Minnesota. It all makes sense. She's like, I'm done.
That park is for different reasons. I mean, they do have stores, but it's not. That park is for some cold.
No, I know. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. That is terrifying. I'm sorry because that's almost like, I'm not saying you have this, but that's like some trauma that you kind of have, right? Like this happened at a school. Like we all have those things that are like, nope, this happened to me before, and it is never going to happen to me again. And that is definitely, what I hear coming from your mouth, right? Like, nope, this isn't an area, but all my people will be alive tonight.
Yep,
That is what I hear you saying.
not on my
So
watch.
Yeah, not on my
yes,
watch.
yes, understandably. So, gosh, I appreciate you sharing that because that is a dark, deep story.
Well, it's pretty bright
No, 40%
and
of the lights
loud.
were out for
Oh yeah.
sure. They all went out.
Yeah. Well, Lisa, I do thank you for jumping on here. I thank you for
Uh-huh.
your willingness to do this, and I know especially this last story is something that still haunts you. And I imagine you walk out and you still see those people down in your head, and you still feel that moment. And I appreciate you sharing that because the importance that ads need to understand is lightning's no joke. And when they tell you that it's 8 to 10 miles for a reason, and you want to make sure that your job, it's going to take you a while to get people out of the stands, and some may not leave, some may be adamantly opposed to leaving, but you still got to do your part. And so I appreciate you being able to be vulnerable and tell that story, and just that firsthand experience for you. It still blows me away that people will try to argue that situation.
The problem I think too, and like I could be way off on this, but there's so much lightning and so many storms in Florida that it's almost like people just get used to it, right? They're
Mhm.
like, oh, every afternoon, or all the time, it's no big deal. And that is where the danger definitely comes in. And you highlighted that. We've had lots of Florida or weather conversations in general on this podcast, but this one's pretty. This is up there with the light pole falling over. This is.
Yeah, this one's, I just, it's going to take me a minute to kind of recover from
Yeah, I
this.
need a minute. I need a minute now.
I need my booth. I need to go step in my booth, Lisa. Just take a moment.
Yes.
Or go get on a boat. That may be what you want to do. Is just like, I want to get
Yeah.
away from here.
Mhm.
I don't know if you
Mhm.
remember this. Probably Danielle doesn't, but there used to be a commercial that said, Calgon, take me away. That
I
Danielle
don't.
probably doesn't remember that. Lisa's nodding her
I
head, so
do.
I'm assuming she remembers that.
Mhm.
But it just take you out of that situation. Just Calgon, get me out of here. That may be what Lisa was experiencing in that moment. Just get me on a boat. Let me be out where I'm not peopling, where I'm not dealing with whatever. And I'm definitely not dealing with lightning. So I can only imagine the trauma that's still there and the visuals that's still there in your mind.
Yeah, yeah. Pretty daunting. Yeah, we were able to get through. So
That's
that's
good.
that's
That's
a
the
blessing.
positive.
Yep.
Well,
Yeah.
I do. I want to say it again, Lisa. I appreciate you coming on here. I thank you for taking your time. I thank you for being patient with us so we could get this thing scheduled. And I think what you've done is highlight some things that people as ADs or our profession is just going to have to hopefully not experience the second one for sure. But you dealt with two extremes. You dealt with lights that had to be. I mean, it went dark and then it was bright and then it was a
A
whole lot of
mess.
things that I could run with. But you've told some stories that'll be very applicable for ADs across the country. So I appreciate you
Yep.
taking the time for us.
No, thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely.
I had fun. Thanks.
No, thank you very much. Like Dustin said, I echo all of that. It definitely touched a lot of EDs across the country. So I appreciate your time today.
That wraps up this episode. Thank you for listening, and thank you to our sponsor, Wall of Fame, who excels at telling your school's stories and supports us in telling ours. Check out the description of this episode for a link to receive a discount on all Wall of Fame products. We are looking forward to the next story and hope you are too.